Okay, welcome to the April 4th edition of the All Bugs Good and Bad webinar. Today's topic is going to be Get TickSmart, 10 things to know, 5 things to do. My name's Sean Banks. I'll be one of the moderators here. I work in Johnston County office of North Carolina Cooperative Extension. Kathy Flanders will also be helping me moderate the chat box. So if you do have any questions, we ask that you type them in the chat box on the left-hand side of the screen. We'd also, at the end, like for you to take a short evaluation of the program, and we'll put that link up at the end of the program so that you can go there to take that short evaluation so that we can find out if we are giving you relevant information that helps you to get the information you need to stay safe. Today's presenter is Dr. Thomas Mather. He's the tick guy from the University of Rhode Island. Dr. Tom Mather is Professor of Public Health, Entomology, and Zoonotic Diseases at the University of Rhode Island. Dr. Mather is Director of the University of Rhode Island Center for Vector-Borne Diseases and its TickEncounter Resource Center. His current research includes tick-borne diseases, prevention, and control. He has raised more than $14 million to support tick-borne disease research and outreach. He's published over 100 papers on the subject, edited 1 book, and holds 4 U.S. patents and 2 trademarks. Dr. Tom Mather, we'll turn the time over to you for our presentation.
Well, thanks very much, Sean, and thanks for everybody for coming online to listen today. So I'm going to talk today about getting TickSmart. Actually, one of our trademarks, getting TickSmart. And we're going to talk about 10 things that you need to know about ticks these days to stay tick safe, and 5 things that you can do to stay tick safe. Just as a way of getting started, I'm going to make an outlandish statement, maybe not so outlandish, that there are more ticks in more places than ever before in the history of North America. And I bet some of you will agree with me out there, and some of you maybe aren't aware of that. But with more ticks in more places, and there's even more to come, I think it's now is, no matter where you live, it's more important than ever to be tick smart. So let me see if I can advance this. So there's more ticks in more places. Here's an example right along that roadway. So right there, not more than a few steps in from the road, and there's thousands and thousands of miles of roadways that look like this. We found these black-legged ticks. These are females. Didn't just find 3. We found 45 in the course of about 3 minutes of looking. So that may have been a particularly hot spot, but on the other hand, this is what we're starting to find. And that's what led me to talk about more ticks in more places. So that's a problem. And it's a problem that more than just people in Rhode Island have, people throughout the Northeast, but throughout much of the United States we're finding there are people at risk for tick-borne diseases, different tick-borne diseases, and that's what we'll talk about today. So as a way of sort of getting started, like my son likes to say, back in the day, people mostly found ticks attached to the top of their head. And those ticks were most likely American dog ticks. And even though those ticks do sometimes carry infectious pathogens, at least in the northeastern United States, I grew up in southern New Jersey, it's the same way there, people rarely got sick. Those ticks were mainly just an annoyance. But now it's different. Today, we still have American dog ticks, and they're still an annoyance. And in some places, they do cause disease. But these days, we've got tiny ticks, black-legged ticks, also known as deer ticks. They are rarely found on the top of your head. In fact, they're so tiny, they're frequently not even found. But they're loaded with pathogens, and people do get sick. So this is a situation where it's more than an annoyance. It's a public health nightmare. I've developed a list of 10 things that I think everyone needs to know about ticks these days to stay tick safe. We can't just know what we used to know about American dog ticks because not all ticks are the same. And so this will be good whether you live where deer ticks do or maybe you just need to have a refresher course on what I need to know about ticks these days. And number 10 starts the countdown. All ticks crawl up. Ticks don't jump, they don't fly, they don't drop from trees. Instead, ticks generally wait for hosts. It's what tick scientists call questing, at a height that corresponds to the height or habits of their preferred host. It doesn't make sense to climb up a tree. What if you jump out and miss? Then you have to climb up the tree again. Immature ticks wait mostly at the shoe level because they really need high humidity to survive, and they find that in the leaf litter. They also tend to favor small rodents as their primary hosts. Adult ticks wait about knee-high, usually along shady edges, and they're just there hoping to latch on to a medium or larger sized mammal. Number 9, all ticks, even deer ticks, come in small, medium, and large sizes. The nearly microscopic larvae hatch from eggs. The middle-sized ticks are called nymphs, and the larger ticks may be either male or female. Each stage takes a blood meal, and they change their appearance as they feed, and we'll talk about that as we go on in the presentation today. Number 8, while most types of ticks are active in the spring and summer, the larger adult stage deer ticks are active during fall, even after heavy frosts, even after polar vortexes. With adult deer ticks, we're always only a few mild days away from tick season, even throughout the winter. Ticks carry disease-causing microbes. I think everyone knows that. But most importantly, and this is something we'll address a little bit later, different types of ticks carry and transmit different diseases. And so this is really important to know when it comes to wanting to know what type of tick you're being bitten by. Only deer ticks, whether they're the black-legged ticks in the east or the western black-legged ticks in the west, but only deer ticks transmit the Lyme disease bacteria. Other types of ticks may ingest the Lyme bacteria and they may test positive, but that's only because they've taken their blood meal from a reservoir host as well. But they're not able to transmit it, but deer ticks are. Number 5, for many tick-borne diseases, there's a time delay between when the tick attaches and when it starts to transmit pathogens. This is really an important public health message because it means that for most deer tick transmitted pathogens, you have between 24 and 36 hours to find and remove feeding ticks before they can transmit an infection. So that allows us an opportunity to use a strategy of doing a daily tick check, promptly removing ticks, and that strategy really can prevent disease. And we will talk more about that a little bit later. So it also helps to know what to look for when you're doing your daily tick check. A lot of times people have no problems finding adult stage ticks, but they're really not clear about nymphal stage ticks or even larvae. So an unengorged deer tick nymph is the size of a poppy seed, as you can see right here on this poppy seed bagel. So that's what you have to look for, and you have to look carefully. The unengorged adult deer ticks are about the size of a sesame seed. The most reliable and safest way to remove an attached tick is with a pointy tweezer. Never coat the tick with Vaseline, gasoline, or touch it with a hot object, especially not in that order. After removing the tick, disinfect the tick bite site with alcohol and save the tick too. Don't just throw it away. If you do, how else are you going to be able to identify it if you haven't saved it? When it comes to repelling ticks, wearing clothes and shoes treated with permethrin is the best and easiest way to prevent tick bites. Putting DEET repellent on exposed skin may help some, but it's not all that effective against ticks because a lot of times you don't have exposed skin. So we're going to talk more about wearing tick repellent clothes as well. Finally, I think it's really important for people, they won't take any action if they don't think the action is going to help. But the only way someone gets a tick-borne disease is through a tick bite. And that means that if you prevent tick bites, tick-borne diseases are completely preventable. All you've got to do to stay tick safe and healthy is to regularly practice a few simple behaviors and also keep these 10 facts about ticks in mind. It'll make the actions that we're going to talk about a little bit later seem understandable if you keep these things about ticks in mind. Okay, so we've already kind of discussed that there's more ticks in more places, and we all seem to agree, I think, that that's a problem. There may even be more ticks where you live. We have a new TickSpotters crowdsourced tick survey across America. We started it just in this past fall, and already it's revealing just how these ticks are starting to push their previously established boundaries. So how did this happen? Maybe it's climate change. Maybe Al Gore is right. Well, it may have something to do with climate change. The climate change forecasts for the eastern United States predict more extreme weather episodes, but also more humid summers. And a recent study that we did here at URI has demonstrated nicely that with more humidity in June, we end up with greater nymphal deer tick survival. Some proportion of these ticks die whenever the humidity is lower than 82% in their shady forest or forest edge habitat for longer than 8 hours. But with high humidity comes better tick survival and more chance for tick encounters and disease. I think more important than climate in this national more ticks in more places trend is the exceptional increase in white-tailed deer and their movement even into semi-urban and sometimes urban environments. Deer are the principal reproductive host for black-legged ticks, Lone Star ticks, and even Gulf Coast ticks. And it's these tick populations that are growing and spreading the most. As an example, here in Rhode Island, we estimate that every year, every deer, on average, serves as a blood meal for enough adult deer ticks to allow them to make nearly 500,000 new larval ticks. That's every deer, every year, making enough fed females to lay eggs that hatch 500,000 ticks. It's incredible. And wherever deer can encounter adult ticks, tick populations are sure to grow, especially if the immature ticks find their preferred hosts, rodents and birds. And these rodents and birds, but not deer, are the animals that infect the immature deer ticks, the larvae and the nymphs, with the agents that cause disease: Lyme disease, babesiosis, anaplasmosis, and now 2 new diseases, Miyamotoi relapsing fever and Powassan virus. This life cycle is happening in the places that you play, but also in the places where you live, too. When there are very few ticks, then they mostly just get picked up by the wild animals, and the pathogen transmission merely cycles between the ticks and the wildlife. But But when there are more ticks in more places, it's these more ticks that allow the infections in wildlife to spill over into people and pets. The bottom line is, with more ticks, it means more spillover potential. So, what are people to do when they find they live where deer ticks do? So we've developed a list of 5 top actions to stay tick safe. Let's just take a few minutes now to review all of them. It's important to know what types of ticks live where you do and when they are active and looking for a host. So what types of ticks are there and when are they active? That's a really critical piece. For example, here in the Northeast, we really only have 3 main types of ticks that bite people and pets, and they only have 3 life stages, so that's not really too much to keep straight. And besides, on our TickEncounter website, we have user-friendly tools like the one shown here to help everyone be able to identify ticks just like a Tick Pro. Here's a tool that we have that is the current level of tick activity across America. So you can see, if I can get my pointer going here, that for every 2-week period, we update this. It shows highlighted the ticks that are most likely to be encountered, and this is in November, and then other ticks that you might encounter as well. And you can see that in that time period, in that region, the risk index is high. If we were online and could switch that around, you could click different regions and you would actually see the current tick activity in your area, and you might want to do that on your own. So one way that we're feeding this information is through this Tick Spotters program that you can see here. So when you encounter a tick, our hope is that you will fill in what type of tick, send it to us, and then most importantly, we hope you will send us a picture of the tick as well. It helps us help you better. I need to click that off. Okay. One of the things that we found very quickly when we introduced this Tick Spotters is that the majority of people don't encounter the unfed version of ticks, the ones that look like the typical pictures that most resources have. Instead, they encounter partially engorged ticks, and these ticks look differently. So we very quickly developed this helpful time series showing just how ticks change their appearance as they feed. And so you can see that it's the same tick. This tick is the same as this tick. And quite frequently, what we'll get submitted to us are pictures that look like this or this or this. And for most people that aren't familiar with ticks, they would have no idea that it's the same tick as this. But this is the picture that people mostly see. So we're hoping that this will help elevate people's tick literacy just a little bit so that they better understand how ticks change as they feed. We're also developing other tools so that we can help people that are struggling get the ID correct. A lot of times people ask, you know, how can I so quickly recognize these things? Well, I've been doing it for a number of years, for one thing, and I'll just share a few of the things that I look for. So in adult ticks, for instance, I look first at the scutum or shield that's pointed out right there. It's very distinctive. It's on the top side of the tick. On adult ticks, for the 5 or 6 species that most people will encounter across America, there are, you know, either it's solid or it has patterning like this. This American dog tick, the scutum is, and the nice thing about the scutum is it never really changes. So as the tick feeds, the body of the tick changes, but the scutum never changes. The other thing I look for that sometimes is helpful is the length of the hypostome. You can see that here is an example of a short one compared to a longer one in reference to this piece right here, which is the sort of the basis capitulum of the tick. So here, this is longer than that. Here, this is about the same size as that. And so that's our way of gauging a short or long hypostome. Brown dog ticks, for instance, have a triangular shaped palps, and the overall feeling that you get when looking at one of them is that their mouth part is more triangular shaped. And so that's another key feature. Sometimes I don't even have to have a very good picture. I can just see sort of some of these features, and I'm able to determine what the type of tick it was biting. So if you do get a tick bite, always save the tick in a Ziploc bag or tape it to a card with the date. You don't want to lose track of your tick. And once you know what features to look for, you'll be better able to identify the tick and be prepared to decide what, if any, action you should take. And you're going to want to know, here's just an example of our tick ID page on TickEncounter, what the actual size of the tick is, and then you can click on the tick that you think it is and look at it more closely. So you're going to want to identify your tick because different types of ticks transmit different disease agents. And that's really what we're going to talk about for a few minutes next. So deer ticks, or black-legged ticks, transmit the agents causing Lyme disease, babesiosis, anaplasmosis, neomatoi relapsing fever, and Powassan encephalitis. In Rhode Island and in much of the northeastern United States and the upper Midwest, 1 of every 3 deer ticks is carrying some disease agent that can make you sick. 1 out of 3, pretty high rate. American dog ticks don't transmit these agents, but they do transmit the agent that causes Rocky Mountain spotted fever and rarely tularemia as well. Both of these infections are exceptionally rare in Rhode Island and in much of the Northeast, but they do occur elsewhere in greater incidence. So it's important to just keep track of this because it helps you assess the relative risk after a tick encounter. Lone Star ticks have their own suite of agents that they transmit as well, including the agent of human ehrlichiosis and a bacterium called Borrelia lone stari. So if you live or work where deer ticks do, it's really important to make doing a daily tick check a habit. Remember, you generally have at least 24 hours to find and remove an attached tick before it can transmit an infectious dose. So to do an effective tick check, it helps if you don't have any clothes on. If you've worked outdoors in tick habitat all day, take your work clothes off as soon as possible when you come inside and throw them in a hot dryer for about 10 minutes, and that will kill any attached ticks. And because you've taken your clothes off and thrown them in the dryer, now you're naked, so it gives you a great opportunity to start looking yourself over as well. Depending on the time of year and where you are working, pay particular attention to areas below the belt. That's not where people mostly look at themselves, but that's where the immature stages of ticks tend to be found, where your clothing constricts and it restricts the movement of ticks as they crawl upwards. One study showed that people who showered or bathed within 2 hours after coming inside from working in their yard that had a lower incidence of Lyme disease than people that didn't do this practice. It may be true for people who work out, it may not be true for people who work outside all day, but any chance to do a daily tick check while naked is likely to be protective. So we have reminder cards that you could put even in the shower or the bathroom just to remind you to do a tick check when it's most convenient. And we like to say never miss an opportunity to do a tick check. So the next time you visit the head, sit down and then look down. You know, no one wants a tick to be biting them there, and you'd be surprised at how often ticks do bite there. And anyway, what else do you have to do while you're sitting there? So there's a good TickSmart tip. If you do find a tick biting you, be sure to use pointy tweezers to remove it. With pointy tweezers, you can grasp the tick, even those tiny nymphs that are the size of a poppy seed, by their heads, and usually you can get the entire mouth part out as well. But even if you don't get the mouth part out, no worries. As long as you've removed the body of the tick and disinfect it, the pathogens are back in the salivary glands of the tick, which are back here. The last thing you want to do, though, is to squeeze at the back with these blunt tweezers, and notice that you hydraulically would be pushing everything sort of this way. So grab it close to the skin as possible, and you can do that routinely, no matter whether they're on your butt cheek or on your underarm with pointy tweezers. Next, I want to talk about turning your clothes into tick-repellent clothes. It's a strategy that just works, and it works well. You can treat your own shoes and your clothes, but let's focus on shoes for a moment, using permethrin sprays. We recommend spraying the shoes at least once every month during the season that immature ticks are active. So for deer ticks, that's May, June, July, and August. The larvae are active in August and September, so you may want to spray your shoes even out into the fall. You spray the shoes until they are wetted, and then give them a chance to dry before wearing them. It's a great idea to do this at the end of a workday, so if you're working outside, because then they'll be dry the next day. In my own family, I would just get up early on a Saturday morning in the appropriate months and take everybody's shoes and spray them. They'd be dry by the time they woke up, and they wouldn't even know that I did it. So keeping the whole family tick safe. You can also spray your clothing, but remember, the ticks are small and they all crawl up, so start with your socks and pants. Spray the insides of the pant leg as well as the outside, because if you haven't tucked your pants into your socks, the ticks are actually more likely to crawl up the inside. In addition to spray, there are soaking kits that you can use to soak your clothes as well with permethrin. When you treat your own clothes, the treatment can last through 5 or 6 regular laundry cycles. Another option, though, is to purchase commercially treated clothes. Treated recreational clothing is available from a number of retailers, including LL Bean, REI, Columbia, and many others. And all of these retailers have their repellent clothing lines treated by Insect Shield, a Greensboro, North Carolina company. Insect Shield also has a line of its own treated workwear and playwear. One feature that I'd like to talk a little bit about is the fact that Insect Shield has a treat your own clothes service that's very reasonably priced. You can just send them your clean clothes and you get back clean tick repellent clothes that really work. We've developed a web app here that allows you to assess the permethrin exposure safety profile of wearing repellent clothes. It also has some reference data on studies that have been done to show how effective it can be as well. So there's two studies, one that we've done at URI and one done in North Carolina as well. Some of those results are highlighted right here in terms of the level of protection. Even if you're wearing summer weight clothes, you still get a high level of protection. Here's the results from the North Carolina study with workwear and forestry workers. You can see in the first year, there was an 82% reduction in tick encounters, and most of those ticks were Lone Star ticks. This is work from Megan Vaughn and Steve Meshnick at University of North Carolina. The same people were left in the study in year 2. It seemed like the clothing didn't work quite as well in year 2. It was not retreated, so there may be some loss of efficacy. But overall, after the 2 years, there was still a 65% reduction in reported tick encounters using and wearing tick repellent clothes in the workplace. A lot of people want to know if the product is safe, and so in this app that we developed on TickEncounter, and you can see it live here and play with it if you want, it calculates your permethrin exposure given what you want to wear and what your weight is. So you would enter your weight in the app right there. Let's say in this particular case we're talking about a 10 or 11-year-old child, and let's just say they wanted to wear all of these things: socks, t-shirt, shorts, maybe a ball cap, all treated with permethrin. So then you could click on the calculate permethrin exposure, and up would come a margin of safety. We translated this to make it more understandable to people, and so it means that you would have to wear the equivalent of 2,186 of these outfits all at the same time, and you would still not just reach the EPA's daily dermal no observable effect level. To me, that means that there's no observable effect from wearing 2,000 pairs of socks. I'm imagining they won't fit into your shoes, however. Anyway, the good thing about this commercially treated clothing is that it can go through the wash and still be effective after 70 launderings, which is kind of incredible. For most people, that's the life of the clothes. So I'd like to show you just how easy it is to make your own clothes, tick repellent clothes, by asking Jeannie to launch this video.
So what do you want to pack?
How about these?
Thank you.
What are you doing, Mom?
I'm filling out a form so we can send your clothes away, get them treated for ticks. Look, your tick repellent clothes are here. All right, let's put these right in the duffel bag so you'll be all ready for camp. Let's not forget to spray your shoes. So I think you're all ready for camp.
So hopefully I'm back online here with you. Whatever your outdoor task may be, you can always be prepared by thinking ahead and having tick repellent clothes ready to slip on, even if you're not wearing them full time. As we show here, maybe right next to the leash to take the dog out, you could be prepared with, treated shoes, treated socks to put on, maybe some treated sweatpants or something, just slip them on over your other clothes or whatever. But at least when you go out, you'll be protected against ticks that you might encounter. All of these ideas make protecting yourself against tick bites as easy as getting dressed in the morning. So another area of concern is protecting your pets too. If you have a pet at home, it's important to be sure they're protected, but it's also important to be sure that you're protected from any ticks that might hitchhike into the house or get on you because of your pet. Last fall, in our Tick Spotters program, about 3/4 of the submissions were tick encounters from pets. So pets clearly are a risk factor for people as well as for the pets themselves. So, did you know that there are 2 types of ticks that are on your dog and cat? Those are those that are attached and feeding, and then those that are loose and wandering. The loose and wandering ticks on an in and out pet is one of the things one way that people are exposed, and it's when they get exposed when they least expect it too, when they're all sitting together inside on their sofa or perhaps even sleeping in bed. So it's really important to protect your pet with a product that has quick tick knockdown properties. So you would want to make sure that the product kills ticks on contact or causes rapid tick detachment in order to protect yourself as well as your pets from ticks that hitchhike into the house. Finally, you can reduce the tick encounter risk in your own yard using safe and effective tick-killing sprays. Maybe even where you live, certainly where we are, there's a growing number of pest management businesses offering tick control. If effective products are used, and I'm going to stress the word effective, and the treatment is targeted to tick habitat, and it's timed to the tick activity periods, you can really achieve significant reductions in tick abundance. In a study that we've been conducting here under a cooperative agreement with the Centers for Disease Control, I'd like you to focus on the fact that we had treated households and untreated households in the same neighborhoods. These treated households were treated by TickSmart professionals. And what they did were 2 bifenthrin treatments each year. And you can see that the average number of ticks per yard was 0.8. We had 25 treated yards, so 0.8 nymphs collected in each treated yard compared to nearly 90 in 52 neighborhood matched controls. So these were yards that were not exactly next door, but they might have been 2 or 3 doors away, so that the ecological conditions were likely similar. That's a huge difference achieved by just these 2 treatments of tick control in the perimeter of the yards. So I think that tick control is really a great strategy for reducing tick encounter risk where you live. Our goal in offering this program today was to help everyone get a little bit tick smarter so that they can be tick safe and lead healthy and productive lives. If you felt that this presentation helped you, we hope you'll consider sharing it and also sharing our Tick Encounter resources more broadly in your own community. And for more information on how to live a tick smart life, we hope you'll regularly visit our URI Tick Encounter website at www.tickencounter.org. With that, I am able to finish.
Dr. Mathers, we had a couple questions that we needed to, or that we wanted to see if you had time to address.
Okay, I have time.
Okay. one of the questions was about a spotting organization for Canada. Do you know if there's a tick spotting organization up in the Canada area?
Well, so I don't know that for a fact, but we actually just changed our form so that people from Canada can sort of put in at least their province and let us know what they're finding. I know we've had some people, we didn't have it set up to accept Canadian submissions before, and so people were submitting probably from like Michigan. We had last fall, we had an awful lot of tick reports from Michigan. I'm wondering how many of those were including Canadian ones.
Okay. Another question was about the app. Is there an app for with the pictures of the ticks on there so that people can identify those ticks as they're going?
We are developing that. Hopefully we'll have that available in the very near future. So again, by either liking our Facebook page or following TickEncounter regularly, people can find out when new things are available and happening.
Okay. I think we already addressed the exposure issues with the permethrin with the one slide. That was a question that came up before you showed that. But there was also a question about can the permethrin be used on skin like DEET?
Yeah, so it's not, that would be against the EPA's label on that. And it's not really as much about the permethrin absorption, but it's about the carrier that gets the product out of the can. So you don't really want to, well, you don't want to at all apply permethrin directly to skin. Ideally, you just treat your clothes, you let them dry, and then wear them just like you would normally.
Okay. Somebody asked about organic controls such as cinnamon cloves and cedarwood oils. Do they work?
Well, so we haven't tested all of these types of things. We do have, as part of our cooperative agreement, a program where we're testing a number of minimal risk natural products. I don't really want to name any by name, but all I would say is that so far in our experiments, the bifenthrin has worked far better than anything else.
Okay. There was at least one question up there as they were flipping through there really quick about the ecological residues of the yard treatments, such as possibly getting into surface water or groundwater. Can you address that issue?
Yeah, so from what I understand, synthetic pyrethroids in general are rapidly broken down once they penetrate into the soil. Soil microbes break them down to harmless byproducts. And so it would appear as though it's not a problem. I believe there have been studies where, there have been a look at well water in particular and have not found issues with permethrin contamination. So we will develop a little bit more rigorous material, but we're kind of restricted by what's available. But it's a good question, and I know it's a concern, and it may actually be something that's holding people back from something that's very effective. And it may not really be an issue. I don't believe it is, but I'm happy to continue to do more research and try and update the information that we have available on that.
Okay. There's a question that just came up a little bit ago. Somebody was, Dee is a leader of a Lyme support group, and she's talked with many people that have contracted Lyme disease with a tick that's been attached for less than 24 hours. Can you address that issue?
Well, I know in some cases we may have a difference of perspective. My perspective on this comes from numerous experiments in the laboratory where I've taken infected ticks ticks that are either from nature, that are naturally infected, or ticks that we've infected in the laboratory, placed them on animals, examined how long they've been attached, and then determined whether there's any infection that occurs. And that's where our estimates of 24 to 36 hours come. Now, from our experience with tick spotters, because we get people's lived experiences with those ticks, they may think that the ticks haven't been attached that long, but then I'd like them to explain why they look like they've been attached for 2 and 3 and 4 days. So I'm not really meaning to challenge Dee on this. We say that risk is low even if your tick is infected if it has not been attached for 24 or 36 hours. In biology, almost everything is possible. There could be something related to how the tick was removed. That could be an issue. There could be an issue about the diagnosis of the disease itself. I'm pretty much just reporting, firsthand experience with experiments directly to determine. We've not really been able to show earlier transmission in our animal models.
Okay. The only other question that I see up there is, does Nebraska have deer ticks?
I know that in eastern Nebraska they certainly do. I think as you move further west, they're probably much less common. But we say that, and we're waiting for tick spotters to tell us, I guess. I don't think we've had any submissions yet from Nebraska, which suggests that either they don't go online very much, or they don't have very many ticks out in the fall and winter. That's only when we've been doing this. Just this spring, for instance, we've had more than several actually, reports, even with pictures of black-legged ticks, western black-legged ticks in Utah. And so that's another state that reportedly didn't have them, but apparently they do. So we'd really encourage people to, find a tick, take a picture, send us this, and we'll add it to our growing database. But please send a picture.
Okay. One other question that I just saw in here, somebody had asked, do you absolutely have to dry them first, or can you just throw the clothes in the washer and then into the dryer? Will that take care of the ticks as well?
Yeah, so it will eventually, but we have shown that the washer does not kill the ticks. And so what if somehow it doesn't get rinsed off and down the drain, and it's still there? Even picking it out of the washer and then throwing it into the dryer. A lot of times what happens, people leave their clothes, they don't wash them as soon as they come inside necessarily, and so the ticks can survive in a hamper full of sort of moist, dampish clothes, even the humidity from the body, for might not be the person that goes to wash them, a few days later, and so that just places them at some level of risk. So the answer is sort of yes, but it's probably even a little bit tick safer to just kill the ticks right away.
Okay. 2 more real quick questions. Does the TickEncounter.org site show activity from tick spotters by area?
Yes, so our reporting map that's right on the home page right now has little pinpoints based on zip code. So when people submit their tick, we ask them to put in their zip code. So there's not, it's a degree of anonymity, but it still gives us an idea of where the ticks are coming from.
Okay. And somebody had mentioned about preserving the ticks once you take them off. What do you think about putting them in alcohol?
It's fine if you. It depends on how long you want to hold on to them. Putting them in alcohol, sometimes depending on the alcohol, it can denature DNA. So if downstream you decide you want to have it tested. It may make that test not work as well. It's fine to keep them just dry in like a little Ziploc bag or, under a piece of tape or something like that. Also works, taped to a card. Sometimes the tape dries out a little bit. It gets a little hard to remove the tick from that, but it's doable. And anyway, keeping them in like a little Ziploc bag with a card, who did it come off of, when did it come off, in case, downstream you want to get a little bit more information.
Okay.
For people that want to save it that way, we'd really appreciate it if you're going to take a picture of it before you put it in the Ziploc bag, though. It just, sometimes the glare and the reflection makes it a little bit hard to see the details that we need to see on the scutum if it's in the bag.
Okay. Jill asked a question just a few seconds ago, if you could repeat the difference between a male tick and a female tick.
Okay, I can. Is my presentation still there? In a female, the scutum only covers the first third of the tick. So here's an example, and we can look at don't focus on the infection so much, but focus on the ticks. So this is actually a female because the scutum covers just the first third. If this was a male, that black scutum would cover the entire body. And the nymph, it always just covers the first third. But if I go down to the dog tick, so it's easy to see now here, the same thing. So this is the female because the scutum covers the first third. And then this is the male because the scutum covers the entire body. And this is just pigment. And as you spread that pigment out, it looks like that. So it's more concentrated on the female scutum, and it's more diffuse on the male. And similarly with the Lone Star ticks, just focus on this. So again, you can see the difference here. The scutum is on the first third of the tick, and here's the pigment on the back, and that causes a concentrated little white spot, thus the name Lone Star tick. And on the male, that pigment gets distributed across the entire back end of the scutum, and you can see little white marks all across the male because the scutum covers the entire body.
Okay. Evidently, Cheryl couldn't find the TickEncounter website where it talks about what species to expect and when. Does it have that on the TickEncounter website?
Yes, so it really is just talking about the current tick activity. It's under the tick identification tab, and there's our tick identification chart, and also the current tick activity app is there as well.
Okay, well, I think we covered all the questions. If I didn't get to one, I apologize for missing it as it was scrolling through everything. Thanks, Dr. Mathers, for taking your time to go over that with us. We really do appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you, and thanks to everyone that was listening.